The studio lights burned bright, cameras locked in, and the audience leaned forward, sensing something electric was about to erupt. Senator John Kennedy walked in with his trademark smirk, clutching his notes like armor. But Denzel Washington was already seated, his posture calm yet commanding, eyes fixed on Kennedy as if he had been waiting years for this moment. The host barely finished introducing the segment before Kennedy launched into a polished speech about serving the people of Louisiana. His southern drawl dripped with charm, but it didn't take long before Denzel cut in, voice sharp as glass. Serving the people? Denzel leaned closer to the microphone, his tone low but carrying across the room. You mean serving the corporations that lined your pockets while families in your own state went hungry? Gasps filled the studio. Kennedy froze for a second, then tried to laugh it off. Now, Denzel, you don't understand how politics works, but Denzel wouldn't let him breathe. I understand perfectly. You sold your vote. You sold your seat. And the price tag wasn't even that high compared to what your people lost. The crowd roared, some standing up and clapping, while others waited for Kennedy's reply. His face flushed red, and he pointed a finger at Denzel, his rehearsed confidence unraveling. You think Hollywood makes you some kind of expert on public service? He snapped. Denzel stayed calm, almost eerily so, letting silence stretch before answering. No. But honesty does. And you wouldn't know the meaning of that word if it hit you in the face. The tension in the room was unbearable, like a storm ready to break. And everyone watching knew, this was not going to be a normal debate. The moderator, caught between two worlds, nervously shuffled his papers, but the clash had already taken control of the room. Kennedy tried to recover, puffing up his chest as if his bluster could erase the sting of Denzel's words. I've fought for Louisiana families every single day, Kennedy declared, his voice louder now, straining to project authority. But Denzel leaned back in his chair, folding his arms with a slow, deliberate motion that made the audience lean in closer. He didn't need to shout, his presence did the work. You fought for families? Denzel said, each word like a hammer. Then explain why, during the hurricane relief bill, you made sure energy companies got tax breaks while your constituents begged for food and water. That's not fighting for families, Senator, that's fighting for your donors. A murmur rippled through the studio, and the cameras caught Kennedy swallowing hard, his smirk gone. He fumbled for a counterattack. This is just another Hollywood script, written to smear honest public servants. Kennedy barked, but his words were drowned out by a wave of boos from the audience. Denzel's eyes never left him, calm but unrelenting. No script, Senator. Just receipts. Deals you signed. Votes you cast. People you betrayed. The moderator tried to interject, but even he was drowned out by the energy of the crowd, half furious at Kennedy, half in awe of Denzel's precision. Kennedy slammed his hand on the table. You think you're better than me because you've got fame? Because you've got fans? Denzel leaned forward again, his voice quiet, but it hit harder than a scream. No, Senator. I'm not better than you. I'm just not for sale. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, some even chanting Denzel's name. Kennedy looked cornered, like a man who had run out of exits, trapped under the glaring lights of truth. Kennedy's face flushed a deep red, his southern drawl faltering as he tried to spin his way out. You don't know the first thing about politics, Mr. Washington, he snapped. You sit there with your Hollywood speeches, but in Washington, deals have to be made. He jabbed his finger into the desk for emphasis. Compromise keeps the system alive. Denzel let the words hang, then leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but cutting. Compromise? That's what you call selling out your people? That's what you call padding your pockets while hospitals close and schools fall apart? His tone sharpened, every syllable landing like a blade. You didn't compromise, Senator. You cashed in. The audience roared with approval, the tension so thick it felt like the studio itself was vibrating. Kennedy's lips tightened. He tried to laugh it off, but his chuckle cracked halfway through. This man thinks politics is some moral fairy tale. It's messy. It's dirty. That's reality. Denzel shook his head slowly, his expression a mix of disbelief and disdain. Reality is a mother working 3 jobs while you vote to cut the programs that keep her kids fed. Reality is veterans begging for care while you vote to fatten corporate subsidies. Reality is Louisiana flooding and you making sure the oil lobby keeps smiling. Don't talk to me about reality, Senator, I live it. I see it. And I'm not afraid to say it. The camera zoomed in on Kennedy's face, sweat glistening on his forehead as he stammered, searching for footing. But the crowd wasn't waiting for his answer, they were already erupting, their chants of "speak the truth" rising above the moderator's desperate calls for order. Kennedy shifted in his chair, tugging at his tie, his authority crumbling under the spotlight. Denzel, composed and firm, didn't need to raise his voice. The silence between his words spoke louder than Kennedy's entire defense. Kennedy finally tried to regain control, forcing a smirk as he leaned into his microphone. So what, Denzel? You think you can sit here, wag your finger, and pretend you're some kind of saint? You don't understand legislation, you don't understand negotiation, and you sure don't understand the sacrifices it takes to keep this country together. The words were meant to sound confident, but his voice trembled at the edges. Denzel clasped his hands calmly on the desk, letting the silence stretch until the entire room leaned in. Then he spoke, measured, deliberate, every word cutting through the air like a blade. Sacrifice? Don't you dare talk about sacrifice. The only thing you've sacrificed is your integrity. Real sacrifice is the teacher who buys supplies with her own paycheck because the budget you voted for gutted her classroom. Real sacrifice is the coal miner who buries his lungs for this country while you sip champagne with the lobbyists who profit off his pain. Real sacrifice is the soldier's mother, waiting by the phone, praying her child comes home. And you, he jabbed a finger now, his calm giving way to righteous fury, you sold their sacrifices for campaign checks and dinner invitations. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in thunderous applause. The moderator's gavel pounded against the table, but the noise swallowed it whole. Kennedy's face twisted, he tried to laugh, but the sound cracked. Ladies and gentlemen, Denzel continued, voice rising with passion now, this isn't about partisanship, this isn't about red or blue. This is about a man who treats public office like a pawn shop. Selling influence to the highest bidder while Americans bleed. That's not leadership, Senator, that's betrayal. Kennedy reached for his water glass, his hand trembling as he brought it to his lips. The camera caught it, the quiver, the shake, and it spread across social media in seconds. Memes were already forming before the debate even ended. Denzel leaned back, calm once more, his words echoing like a gavel's final strike, America deserves better than a senator for sale. Kennedy's smirk had vanished. The senator shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his tie suddenly feeling like a noose. This is just theater, he snapped, his voice cracking as he jabbed a finger at Denzel. You're a performer, not a policymaker. You don't live in this arena. You don't know what it takes to run a state, to hold a seat in the Senate. Denzel didn't flinch. His eyes locked on Kennedy with a calmness that felt like a storm about to break. Theater, he repeated, his voice dropping low, every syllable dripping with disdain. If this is theater, then you've been running the longest con America's ever seen. Except the tickets were paid for by working families, and the show always ends with them broke, sick, or left behind. The audience erupted, some gasping, others clapping wildly. Even the camera zoomed in closer, sensing the weight of the moment. Kennedy, now visibly sweating under the stage lights, tried to laugh it off. This is ridiculous, he said, forcing a chuckle that fooled no one. I serve my people, I always have. Denzel leaned forward, his voice firm, steady, impossible to ignore. Serve your people? Tell that to the veterans waiting months for healthcare while you pushed tax cuts for billionaires. Tell it to the farmers who lost their land while you cashed checks from corporations poisoning their soil. Tell it to the students drowning in debt while you voted against relief. That's not service, that's self-preservation. That's selling your soul, and you did it with a smile. The senator's face turned crimson. His hands clenched into fists on the table, but he had no retort. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by murmurs spreading through the crowd. Then Denzel delivered the line that landed like a hammer: America doesn't need senators who know how to sell themselves. America needs leaders who refuse to be bought. The words echoed, and for a moment it felt like the entire nation was listening. The moderator shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that the exchange had shifted from heated debate to something historic. The crowd wasn't just an audience anymore, they were witnesses. Cameras panned across the room, catching faces that ranged from shock to unrestrained approval. Kennedy tried again, his voice wavering but louder this time, as though volume could mask the cracks. You don't understand the complexity of government, Mr. Washington. Deals must be made, compromises struck. That's how things get done. It's not pretty, but it's reality. Denzel shook his head slowly, his expression carved in disappointment. Compromise, he said, the word slicing through the air. There's a difference between compromise and corruption. A compromise saves lives. Your deals sold them out. You didn't just trade votes, you traded trust, and once trust is gone, so is democracy. The audience erupted again, this time with thunderous applause and chants. Tell the truth. Tell the truth, filled the studio, drowning out Kennedy's attempted rebuttal. Kennedy slammed his hand on the desk. This is outrageous. You're painting me as some kind of villain when all I've done is try to keep the wheels of government turning. His voice cracked at the end, betraying desperation. Denzel leaned forward, his voice rising for the first time, carrying the weight of righteous anger. The wheels of government? They're rusted, Senator, because men like you grease them with greed instead of justice. You sit in your cushioned seat while the people you swore to serve sit at kitchen tables wondering how to pay rent. That's not leadership, that's betrayal. For a moment, Kennedy opened his mouth but no words came out. The camera zoomed in on his stunned face, his silence more damning than any denial. Then Denzel delivered the blow that froze the room. America's tired of politicians who treat public office like a garage sale. Everything's for sale if the price is right. You didn't just sell your vote, Senator. You sold your honor. The room exploded, cheers, gasps, shouts. The sound was deafening, unstoppable. Kennedy slumped back in his chair, visibly defeated, while Denzel remained upright, unshaken, his presence commanding the entire stage. The studio lights glared down, amplifying every twitch on Kennedy's face. He reached for his water glass with a shaky hand, trying to regain composure, but the cameras caught it all, the tremor, the hesitation, the look of a man cornered. Mr. Washington, Kennedy finally stammered, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace, you're an actor. A talented one, no doubt. But this isn't a movie. You don't understand the sacrifices that come with governing. Sometimes you have to play the game to win. Denzel didn't flinch. He let the silence hang for a moment, his eyes fixed on Kennedy, then leaned into the microphone. You're right about one thing, Senator, this isn't a movie. In movies, villains usually get a redemption arc. In real life, they just cling to excuses. The crowd roared. Kennedy's smile faltered completely. His attempt at dismissing Denzel as just an actor had backfired spectacularly. Denzel continued, his tone sharper now, cutting through the noise. You call it playing the game. I call it selling the soul of this country piece by piece. And let me tell you something, when the game is rigged against ordinary people, when the players are the same few rich men cutting backroom deals, it's not a game anymore, it's theft. The chant began again, Denzel. Denzel, filling every corner of the studio. Kennedy shifted in his seat, his tie slightly askew, his carefully rehearsed talking points slipping away like sand through his fingers. You claim you serve the people, Denzel pressed on, his voice steady, his cadence deliberate. But the only people you serve are the ones who can afford you. Tell me, Senator, when was the last time you looked a single mom in the eye who works 2 jobs just to feed her kids? Or a veteran who can't afford healthcare? Do you even know what sacrifice means anymore? Kennedy's lips parted, but nothing came. The cameras caught his silence, magnifying it, replaying it in the minds of millions watching at home. Then Denzel delivered the line that would trend within minutes: "You don't serve America, Senator. You auction it off." The audience gasped, then erupted into applause so loud it rattled the set. Kennedy tried to gather himself, fumbling with his notes, but the damage was done. Every camera in the room zoomed in on his pale face, on the beads of sweat forming just above his brow. His lips pressed together in a thin line, searching for a lifeline, a clever retort, anything that could salvage his standing. "Mr. Washington," he began, voice cracking slightly, "I've dedicated my life to public service. I've stood with the people of Louisiana through storms, through hardship. You don't know the weight of responsibility I carry." Denzel cut in, not letting him finish. "Responsibility? Is that what you call pocketing checks from corporate lobbyists while your constituents drown in poverty? Is that what you call turning your back on small businesses while foreign investors line your campaign coffers? You call that service, Senator? I call it betrayal." The words hit like a hammer. The crowd gasped, then cheered, the sound reverberating like thunder. Kennedy shifted in his chair, visibly rattled, his eyes darting to the moderator as if searching for a rescue that never came. Denzel leaned forward, his tone lowering but his intensity rising, each word deliberate and sharp. "The truth is, you're not weighed down by responsibility. You're weighed down by deals, dirty deals that keep you rich and keep America stuck. And tonight, Senator, you can't hide behind spin. You can't filibuster your way out. People are watching, and they see you." Kennedy tried to muster a reply, something rehearsed. "That's an unfair accusation." "Unfair?" Denzel barked back, his voice booming over the audience's reaction. "What's unfair is a kid in Baton Rouge skipping dinner because her mom can't afford groceries while you wine and dine with CEOs. What's unfair is veterans coming home to nothing, while you cash checks signed by defense contractors. You want unfair? Look in the mirror." The audience was on its feet now, clapping, shouting, chanting Denzel's name in unison. The cameras caught it all, Kennedy shrinking into his chair while Denzel stood taller with every word. And then came the line that sealed the night: "America doesn't need senators for sale. America needs leaders who can't be bought." The roar that followed drowned out even Kennedy's attempt to respond. He sat there, defeated, knowing the viral clip was already writing itself. The moderator, visibly stunned, tried to restore order, but the energy in the room had already escaped control. Phones were raised in every direction, capturing the scene from dozens of angles. Hashtags began flooding Twitter in real time: hashtag Senator for sale, hashtag Denzel Truthbomb, hashtag Kennedy exposed. Kennedy attempted to steady his voice. "This isn't Hollywood, Mr. Washington. You can't just give a performance and call it truth. Politics is complicated." Denzel leaned back in his chair, the calm in his posture contrasting with the fire in his words. "Complicated? That's the word politicians use when they want to cover their tracks. When they want to confuse the people. But the truth, Senator, is simple. You've been taking money from the same corporations that poison our rivers, that leave families homeless, that raise the price of insulin. That's not complicated. That's corruption." The crowd erupted again, some standing, some whistling, the noise nearly shaking the studio walls. Kennedy's face tightened, his jaw clenching as if each cheer drove a nail deeper into his credibility. Denzel pressed on, his tone sharper, almost surgical. "And you dare to sit here, pretending to be a man of the people? Let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with a family who lost their home? When was the last time you walked into a classroom with broken desks and underpaid teachers? When was the last time you felt the consequences of your votes?" Kennedy tried to interject, but Denzel raised his hand, silencing him without effort. The audience, sensing the power shift, leaned in closer, hungry for the next blow. "You see, Senator," Denzel continued, lowering his voice just enough to pull the room into silence, "the reason you're squirming right now isn't because of me. It's because deep down, you know I'm telling the truth. And you also know the people finally see it too." A thunderous chant broke out, "Denzel! Denzel! Denzel!" The senator's shoulders slumped, his carefully polished persona collapsing under the weight of a single unrelenting confrontation. The moderator glanced nervously at the cameras, realizing this wasn't just another debate, it was history in the making. By now, the debate stage felt less like a panel and more like a courtroom, and the verdict was already being delivered in real time by millions watching online. Kennedy's lips moved, but his words were drowned out by the audience's chants, a tidal wave that no microphone could control. His attempts to restore dignity collapsed into scattered phrases, complex issues, bipartisan cooperation, smear tactics. Each line fell flatter than the last. Denzel, however, didn't rush. He sat in his chair, shoulders square, eyes locked on the senator with a calm intensity that carried more force than shouting ever could. When the crowd quieted just enough, he delivered the line that would dominate headlines the next morning. "Senator Kennedy, you can dress up lies in policy papers, you can wrap corruption in tradition, but the truth always finds daylight. And tonight, it found you." The studio gasped, some audibly, some with stunned silence. Kennedy froze, unable to summon a retort. His eyes darted to the moderator, then to the cameras, then back to Denzel, as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. On social media, clips of the exchange were already viral. TikTok edits layered dramatic music over Denzel's words. Twitter was ablaze with GIFs of Kennedy's reaction. Memes sprang up faster than news outlets could report, framing the senator not as a seasoned lawmaker but as a man cornered by truth. Kennedy tried once more, forcing out a defensive chuckle. "Well, Mr. Washington, I suppose Hollywood loves a good script." Denzel cut him off, his voice like steel, "This isn't a script. This is America. And America is tired of being sold out." The crowd exploded, a standing ovation rippling through the studio. Even the moderator's attempts at neutrality cracked into a thin smile. Kennedy, shrinking in his chair, reached for his water glass with a trembling hand. The contrast was undeniable, one man shrinking into shadows, the other standing taller in truth. As the camera zoomed in on Denzel's steady expression, the broadcast cut to commercial, but by then, the damage was permanent. Kennedy's reputation had taken a hit that no spin doctor could repair. And for millions of viewers, one truth rang clear: Denzel hadn't just won a debate, he had shifted the conversation on corruption in America forever. Tonight wasn't about politics, it was about truth. When corruption hides behind power, silence becomes complicity. I won't be silent. And neither should America. This fight isn't mine alone, it's ours. And the only way we win is by demanding integrity from those who claim to lead us.